We're here with FanDuel. I got the man himself, Jon Rothstein, for the bracket breakdown. We're talking all things March Madness, and we're going to go through everything you guys got questions, every game we can, all the matchups, storyline stuff. John, thanks for coming on here and welcome.
Thanks, Ryan. This is March.
This is March, 100%. It has been March. It feels like for some time.
Yes,
We've
sir.
seen a ton of madness go on. I think the conference tournaments have been better than I can remember in recent years, and we had some crazy. We got bid stealers. We had the bubble was all over the place. I definitely want to start with the bubble if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
A lot of controversy on some of the things like Michigan, not only getting in with a bye, and other teams like Texas A&M being booted even though they got to the SEC final. I want to hear your thoughts on the bubble and how teams got in, how they got out, and kind of how it went down.
You know, the Texas A&M Notre Dame dynamic to me was really, really interesting because these two teams were both vying for one of the final spots, and Texas A&M beat Notre Dame head to head. And I also think, Texas A&M proved on a neutral court over the last couple of days how competitive it could be with some of the best teams in the country. Texas A&M was a fringe NCAA tournament team. Then it went out and beat Auburn and Arkansas back-to-back. Ryan, those are two out of the top 4 16 seeds in the NCAA tournament. To me, they were worthwhile of a bid.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree on that. And I think a team like Virginia Tech that went through the ACC, which is definitely weaker than the SEC is this year, I think everyone can agree on that. They ended up getting 11. Obviously, they won the ACC, so it's different. They had that extra game over Duke at the end, but similar runs in the end, almost like Oregon State had last year. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, 1,000%. It's interesting just you look at how dynamics changed with momentum. Certain coaches will tell you, there's two sides to this. Some coaches believe that entering the NCAA tournament with the momentum of winning a conference tournament can go a long way in March. Others will say it's good to be rested, it's good to be refreshed, it's good to be off the radar. If you look back to last season and you look back, Baylor and UCLA were two Final Four teams. Neither won their conference tournament. So there's no inexact science and no exact science how to do this, I should say.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that's why, like you said, this is March. This is why we call it the madness. A ton of stuff is going to always happen.
Yes.
Nothing's ever predictable, and I think the Oregon State thing, like to me, Richmond is a similar team like that this year. Richmond and Virginia Tech, and obviously those teams would not want to lose in the conference tournament and have that rest because they didn't have that luxury to afford. So they needed to win their tournaments to get in. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing those teams in the first round. Richmond got faced up with Iowa, probably the hottest team in the country right now, maybe outside of Tennessee. What are your thoughts out of that top of the Midwest region where Richmond is? And they won the A-10, which is awesome. And I think they could be a dangerous team, but a really, really tough first-round matchup.
Well, you know me, I love to name the regions based on the storylines that I think are going to emerge. So I look at the Midwest region, and I see a Kansas team that's obviously played very well. Bill Self is wringing out the sponge, but they're not vintage Kansas. There's no Andrew Wiggins, Josh Jackson, Joel Embiid. I look then at Auburn, I see a team that's been hampered by limited guard play, quite frankly. I mean, in Auburn's SEC tournament loss to Texas A&M, the troika of guards that the Tigers lean on, Zep Jasper, K.D. Johnson, and also Wendell Green were a combined 7 of 34 from the field. They're vulnerable. Then I see Wisconsin as a 3 seed, a team that lost early in the Big Ten tournament to Michigan State and also lost its last regular season game to Nebraska. And then we have Providence as the 4 seed, 25-5, a historical season, first ever Big East regular season title. But they kind of limp into the NCAA tournament. So I look at this region. I look at it's the region of vulnerability.
Okay.
And I think if you're going to take one outside the box Final Four pick, you do it from the Midwest region. And look, I'm pretty, steadfast on my opinions when it comes to players, but I felt Oscar Tshiebwe should have been the National Player of the Year. He was my National Player of the Year. Johnny Davis was right behind him. I also understand, and I think we do too much of this in the media, that people want to forecast prospects for the next level. That's why people talk about Jabari Smith and Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren. But right now, if we're talking about which player is simply playing the best basketball, it's Iowa's Keegan Murray. I mean, Ryan, in the Big Ten tournament, Murray averaged 28 and 8 and shot a blistering 61% from 3-point.
Incredible, yeah.
I'm not saying that, again, Keegan Murray should have been the National Player of the Year. I'm not saying he should be the number 1 pick in the draft, but Keegan Murray is playing better than any other player in college basketball right now. And with all due respect to Iowa, I have said this time and time again, if you flipped him to a blue blood program, if he played for Michigan State, the view universally would be different. I'm taking Iowa to the Final Four.
I think that's going to be a popular pick because of how hot they are, but like rightfully so. It makes a lot of sense. And I think Keegan Murray, he didn't get a lot of the recognition because Iowa wasn't getting a lot of the recognition early on in the season because they were playing a very weak schedule out of conference, and he was scoring 30 a night and getting 15 boards and 5 blocks. But then he started doing it in Big Ten play, and he slowly started to get that recognition. And it wasn't really until this last 10-game span where Iowa and Keegan Murray have been really kicking up, and thus why they're a 5 seed and not near that 7 or 8 line now.
Agreed, 1,000%.
Yeah. But I think so. Stay in the Midwest region real fast. You talk about sleepers. I want to bring up San Diego State. Okay. I'm a huge Mountain West fan. One of my favorite conferences to watch for years, especially this year. And I think San Diego State is a dangerous game for Kansas as long as they can get past Creighton. Elite defense. Matt Bradley's been playing well. They're really experienced. Definitely want to hear your thoughts there.
I just feel like, watching San Diego State sometimes, and again, full credit to them being in this position because remember, they're a team that lost Matt Mitchell and Jordan Shackle.
Right.
But I will say this, the lack of offense around Matt Bradley is something that really, really can, I think, affect how far you can go in the NCAA tournament. They kind of need like a canteen in the desert somewhere to step up and be a secondary scoring option.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's going to be interesting. Kansas has actually been better defensively than usual, I'd say, but offensively is obviously where they thrive. So it'll be a really interesting matchup as long as San Diego State, like I said, can get past Creighton Blue Jays of a high-powered offense versus statistically the second best defense in the entire country in the Aztecs. But I guess we'll see how that goes down.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating game. These 8-9 games, top to bottom, are all going to be pick-ems. You look at the matchups, up top in what I call the region of star power. We've got Seton Hall against TCU. I looked it up today. Jamie Dixon was 7-4, I believe, against Seton Hall in his time in the Big East. Remember, he was the coach at Pitt for a long, long time. And also, you look at these other matchups, Marquette, North Carolina, that's a heavyweight showdown. And you can't forget about the Boise State matchup with Memphis. You're a Mountain West guy. You got to love that.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that game is in Portland also. So, yes, it's 6 hours away from Boise. Already done the research, but that is significantly closer than it is to Memphis. Memphis is also one of the hottest teams in the country right now, even though they couldn't finish out the AAC final. But I think athletically, Memphis is a top team in the country, and they can really compete with Gonzaga. But so can Boise State on a different level. I think that is easily one of the best first-round games. I'm totally with you. 2 completely different style of teams. I'm very excited to watch that. Do you have any other games, first-round matchups, that you're super keen to watch, 100%?
Well, I don't know how many hours we have, but I'd like to watch all. I'd like to watch all of them. But,
of course.
I think that the winner of Rutgers Notre Dame, I'm going to take Rutgers to win that game, but I think the winner of that game against Alabama will be fascinating for sure. You hit on the Boise State Memphis thing. I think I talked about Carolina Marquette, Murray State San Francisco, simply because it's 2 mid-major teams, and if Murray State were to win, Murray State would get a chance to play the University of Kentucky. As we know, Kentucky would not schedule Murray State regularly. So it would be a game that Kentucky would want to advance to the Sweet 16, but the Wildcats have nothing to gain and everything to lose in that game. And then on the other side of the bracket, Seton Hall TCU, I think, is another really interesting game. And then, the Providence South Dakota State game to me is all sorts of juicy.
Yeah. So when I first saw that come out, I was like, oh my God, the Jackrabbits have an incredible matchup here. A majorly defensive team versus South Dakota State, who is literally all offense. I was beyond excited for that game. I thought South Dakota State would be closer to a 12 seed, but it honestly is what it is. Incredibly excited for that game. And if we have South Dakota State, Iowa in the second round, that could be a 200 total point game with their offense. This would be incredible.
Yeah, I'm taking South Dakota State over Providence. You got to roll the dice somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Back to the Murray State thing. So Murray State's a team that I labeled as potential Final Four team a couple months ago, and I still stand by that. To me, the East region is incredible. It's ridiculous. It's so good. Talk about firepower. Does Murray State, Kentucky feel like a little bit of a little brother, big brother thing like Loyola, Illinois was last year when Loyola took them down?
No question. No question. When you think about the programs in the state of Kentucky from a college perspective, obviously Kentucky and Louisville are going to be 1 and 1A. Kentucky's obviously going to be the focal point there. But then I would even say over Murray State, some people might see Western Kentucky before Murray State when you look at, the programs in the state of Kentucky. So that would be an incredible game for the state if the Racers were going to get that shot in the round of 32. I think a lot of people are overlooking San Francisco because people are already looking ahead to Murray State, San Francisco. But that would be an incredible game if we get that game in the round of 32.
Yeah, and I think it's a bummer that Murray State ended up getting on the 7 line. I completely understand that based on the metrics and like they play in the OVC. It is what it is at times. But they got pitted against San Francisco and then Kentucky, and it's a bummer for both those sides, for Murray State and San Francisco. But I guess we'll see if either of them can compete with Kentucky.
Yeah.
Back to some of the other first round games. We're gonna go up to the south, the top right here. This little cluster of 4 has been. It's been one night. I'm already losing sleep over it. To me, Houston, UAB, Illinois, Chattanooga, any of the 4 can go to the Sweet 16. Do you lean any certain way with these teams?
I mean, I think UAB has, star power with Jelly Walker. They have a lot of high major transfers, but are you going to, take that in the impulse of making that pick over Kelvin Sampson, who's done as good of a job as any coach anywhere this season, considering that Houston is a 5 seed in this thing and lost 2 perimeter starters and maybe the conference player of the year in Marcus Sasser and another guy in Tremont Mark that was going to be a 10 to 12 point per game scorer.
Yep.
So I'm taking Houston. And look, I mean, people can talk about Chattanooga all they want. Lamont Paris I've known since he was an assistant at the University of Wisconsin. But with all that said, are they going to be able to withstand the most dominant, physically imposing force that I've ever covered in college basketball in Kofi Cockburn? Like, it sounds good. Well, Chattanooga won a game at VCU. They're good. They're out of SoCon. But then you have to line up and beat them.
Yeah, I think like Illinois, obviously Kofi, then they have a lot of outside play, a lot of guard play, even with Curbelo as like their X factor now, but Trent Frazier and Alfonso Plummer, they're good. I think Chattanooga is similarly built in a sense that they run behind Malachi Smith and David John Baptiste, and then Silvio De Sousa, like you said, can he match up against Kofi? I don't know if anyone really can, but he's a good guy out of the mid-major schools to try to do so at least. I would have to say.
I would agree. I mean, they're going to need De Sousa to play his best game for them to have a chance.
Yeah, exactly. We can stay in this region real fast. So you see these guys coming through. Which team out of Houston, Illinois, do you think poses a bigger threat to Arizona if it were to be a Sweet 16 matchup?
Well, I call this the region of star power, and obviously Illinois has more star power because it has Kofi Cockburn. But I think any team that's going to have a chance to beat Arizona in this tournament has to have capable size. UCLA beat Arizona. They played 3 times. UCLA beat them once. But even in the victory, Arizona overwhelmed UCLA on the backboard. Arizona is not just the most aesthetically pleasing team in college basketball. They are the most physically imposing team in college basketball. They are a team that, again, is just unbelievably big up front and can play ping pong off the glass at times. So I think you're going to have size. That's why when I look at this, at the makeup of this bracket, I think it's set up nicely for an Arizona-Illinois rematch. Remember, those 2 teams played in December in Champaign, and Arizona won. That was probably the first time that I would say that people kind of thought that, Arizona was a real contender under Tommy Lloyd here.
Yeah, and I think they've come a really, really far away since then. They've gotten the recognition. They obviously had the recognition. They were 1 seed to the 2nd overall seed in the tournament. Illinois was dealing with incredible amounts of player availability issues throughout the first half of the season, but still a really, really good win to put them on the map, I guess. And Arizona, like I said all day today and yesterday, that athletically and physically, just like you said, there's almost no one that can compete with them in this region. Tennessee is obviously a team in the bottom that beat them early in the year, but I think Arizona's, again, come a long way. And physically, like I said, they're a mind of their own. Benedict Mathurin is incredible. And you talk about before some NBA prospects, some scorers, take it as you will. He's still like an All-American level player. He's been unbelievable this year.
Well, and also to me, he is ready to explode like a volcano in this NCAA tournament. I mean, the NCAA tournament is about finding guys who can explode. And obviously, college basketball fans know about Ben Mathurin, but now we're going to get people from the periphery seeing and sampling the sport for the first time. Ben Mathurin's going to be one of those guys that has all the potential to move on in a major, major way. And, you look at the other side of the bracket, and if Arizona were to play a Villanova or Tennessee, one of those things that really, puts me in, caution about picking one of those teams to beat Arizona, those aren't teams that have great size up front.
Right. Yeah, and I was at MSG on Saturday night. I watched the Villanova Creighton final. It wasn't vintage Villanova by any means. They got the job done, but like you said, and I think they actually game planned for Adama Sanogo on Friday night against UConn pretty well. But like Kalkbrenner on Creighton is not someone you game plan for, and they had a ton of issues. He had almost 20 points and a bunch of boards he was killing them all night. And I think put them against like Christian Coloco or Kofi Coburn, and they will have a ton of issues, 100%.
Agreed. Remember a couple of years ago, too, Villanova was dominated in the round of 32 against Purdue when Purdue had Matt Harms.
Yeah.
This is going back 3 years ago, but Villanova, too, has had that, happen a couple times in the tournament.
Yep, that's a fair point. Staying in this region real fast, the Colorado State, Michigan. We talk about the Mountain West, big Mountain West guy, but the Colorado State, Michigan.
You're buying stock on the Mountain West.
I've been invested. I've been invested for over a couple of years now. But the Colorado State, like the Rams are good. David Roddy is, I think, one of the most exciting players in college basketball. And for most of the casual fans that don't know about him that much, this is a good stage for people to be like, this guy's incredible. He breathes college basketball. He screams a college basketball star for a potential Cinderella run. But they have to play Michigan, who, yes, maybe they shouldn't have gotten that bye, whatever it is. And then they have to play Tennessee. How do you see that them playing out here?
Well, Michigan is a difficult team to draw if you're Colorado State because you have your sights set, obviously, on trying to have a breakthrough run. I mean, Colorado State, I think, has been, maybe the most consistent team other than Boise State in the Mountain West all season long. But now you take on a Michigan team that has pieces back from a squad that went to the brink of the Final Four last year and lost to UCLA. So you look at your Michigan alignment right now, and you've got Dickinson and Brooks, okay, two guys who have played in the most meaningful games that you can play in. Yep. And you've got obviously high-level talent. I mean, that's the thing I think that people, forget a little bit about Michigan is, Caleb Houston and Moussa Diabate are high-level talents, and that can shine through in a one-game setting. Did they overachieve a little bit during the year? Sure. I mean, I think Michigan's record probably should have been a little bit better, but they've done enough to get into the NCAA tournament, and that's an 11 seed. But how many 11 seeds have an All-American?
Probably zero off the top of my head looking at them. Yeah, zero. Isaiah Brockington was probably somewhat close, but no dice.
Yeah, I'm with you. 1,000%.
Yeah. And Tennessee, let's keep it on Tennessee real fast. Like, that's a team looking at their resume, in my opinion, should have been a 2 seed, and in a lot of eyes should have been a 2 seed instead of maybe Duke, who ended up getting that 2, even after losing the ACC final. How do you think the committee went about that, giving Tennessee a 3? And also, do you think that adds fire to the Volunteers?
I was in the impression that Tennessee should have been a 2 and Duke should have been a 3. Now, Duke is still going to have an arduous road to get to a Final Four because whoever they play, whether it's Davidson or it's Michigan State in the round of 32, I know people would want to see Michigan State because it's a brand-on-brand game in the round of 32. Yep. Whoever that Duke is matched up with will obviously be in a situation where I think it's going to be a difficult game for Duke, but then you might have to get through Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. So Duke has its work cut out, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think people want the Michigan State. They want the Izzo, Coach K, no matter who's going to win. They want to see that handshake at the end. But I've been on the A-10 teams for a little while. Richmond and Davidson were both looking great on Sunday, even though Davidson didn't get the win. They have a lot of firepower, very efficient offense, can shoot the ball from everywhere, experienced guard play. And I think that if they get into a shootout with Duke, can easily hold a lead, especially at the free throw line throughout the game. I'm big on Davidson as potential to go to the Sweet 16.
Well, and the thing is this, too, Davidson is going to be playing with a clear head, I think, in the round of 64 because it's the Foster Lawyer game.
Yeah,
Foster Lawyer, and again, I looked this up this morning or late last night. I don't know, the days run into each other. You know how it goes. But I looked it up this morning. I thought this was a really interesting note on Foster Lawyer. I'll get you the exact terms right now. Just give me a minute.
Go ahead.
Foster Lawyer, obviously was sporadically in the lineup at Michigan State during his college career, was kind of got a chance as a starter. They went back and forth, but he made 43 three-point shots at Michigan State during the first 3 years of his college career. He's already made 72 for Davidson this season. So he's been unleashed a little bit here. And, I would say that I would be concerned about the physical prowess of Michigan State up front, but I don't think Michigan State has the type of size up front that really, intimidates you. Like, I don't see a Xavier Tillman. I don't see a Jaren Jackson Jr. on this team. I see a Michigan State team that's been inconsistent, that doesn't really do a good job taking care of the ball. Davidson's got a puncher's chance there.
Yeah, and I think we've seen from Michigan State throughout the year that they struggle in sometimes late game situations when they don't have a go-to guy, and Max Christie hasn't been that superstar they want him to be, and Gabe Brown and Bingham haven't been again, no one's really stepped up to be the guy. And I think you see similar things with teams with a team like Texas, who maybe has done better than Michigan State overall by a little bit. but similar struggles throughout the year, I'd say.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah. Down to that Virginia Tech game. Virginia Tech, we talked about them before, one of the hotter teams in the country out the ACC title. They shoot the three ball really well. They're a team that people are definitely going to get excited for, and an interesting matchup against Texas in two majors, and one is an 11 seed. And hopefully one could potentially get Purdue, and then after that, they could get Kentucky or Murray State.
Yeah, I mean, this is the interesting thing that I got to look at, and this is the thing I look at, when you look at Texas and Virginia Tech, they're polar opposites in the way that they're constructed. Like, we would probably agree that, Texas was the team that, quote unquote, won the transfer portal in the offseason. People thought they could go to a Final Four. They wound up as a 6th seed. Virginia Tech's the complete opposite. Virginia Tech is a team that has been put together by a good staff and a great offensive coach in Mike Young. But, here's the thing, man. You look at this starting five, 4 of Virginia Tech's starters, Storm Murphy, Hunter Couture, Kevin Aluma, and Justin Mutz, either began or initially committed to mid-major programs out of high school. And again, they have molded right now and been melded into a team that won the ACC tournament title. So it goes to show you that talent and rankings and, Twitter buzz, even though I'm guilty of it sometimes, it's not everything.
Yeah, and I think that's a tell for teams like Memphis that don't have Imani Bates anymore, but have been playing better without him and stuff like that. We have a good question from Pat Fitzpatrick in the chat here about this little region here. Am I the only person who likes Purdue over Kentucky? Now, Purdue is not a good defensive team by the statistics by any means. Can they contend and can they go far? Yes, but definitely want to hear your thoughts on that because no defense usually doesn't do so well in the NCAA tournament.
Purdue's the forgotten team in the East region, the region of branding. They are the forgotten team. There's obvious buzz about Kentucky. There's obvious buzz about UCLA and Baylor because UCLA, I think, has turned a corner here, even though they lost to Arizona with how well Jaime Jaquez is playing. Purdue, I think people have kind of forgotten about as a bona fide threat for the Final Four simply because they haven't been that good defensively and they didn't finish strong, losing at Wisconsin at late in the regular season and also losing in the Big Ten tournament. No, Purdue is a forgotten commodity.
Yep, I think that's fair. And it's going to take a lot. They might not even get Kentucky. Like we said, they might get the Loyola, Illinois, the same thing with Murray State, Kentucky. They might get Murray State out of it. If they get past Virginia Tech and Yale, you never know. Staying in this region, Baylor, the reigning champions, they've dealt with injuries all year. LJ Cryer is still on the 50-50 on that one. Reigning champions don't do it well historically by any means, especially in recent years. They haven't gotten past the Sweet 16 reigning champions, I think, in 5 or 6 years. Takes on Baylor, and if Scott Drew can take them past North Carolina in the second round, and then how far they can go.
Baylor doesn't have what it had, but Baylor still has enough to get to a Final Four. Now, I'm not saying they will, but Baylor still has pieces. If they can just keep Flagler, Akinjo, and Meyer together, they have the pieces, that I think are in firm position to be good enough to get to a Final Four. Now, with that said, I expect them, to win their first game, but then whoever they get in that second game, whether it's Carolina or Marquette, is going to be an arduous opponent. Here's the thing, and I tell people this all the time, Ryan. The 2 days I love, the 2 days I yearn for on this beat are the round of 32 Saturday and Sunday because it's like a weeding out process. After the first 2 days, you have your Cinderellas, and then you have obviously teams maybe who hold serve with a little bit of chalk. But if you win your next game, that second game, you are getting 5-6 days more of media attention. It changes the complete perception and feel of your program. I think that it's going to be a fascinating dynamic. Whoever winds up playing Baylor in Fort Worth, I think it could be, one of the best games of the round of 32, regardless of opponent.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good point about the round of 32 because you see games where, like, even if you expect some upsets, and obviously the 116s usually at least and the 215s they might end up being 20, 30-point games. It happens, but those second-round games really do weed out some of the weaker opponents. And Marquette, if you go back maybe a month, North Carolina is barely in the tournament, if at all, and Marquette is a team that people are looking at as a 5 or 6 seed, a potential dark horse Final Four team behind Justin Lewis, who is absolutely playing out of his mind. And even guys like Darryl Morsell. As a Maryland fan, I'm a big Darryl Morsell fan. So I think Marquette is definitely a danger for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So let's looking at this, keeping this region at the end of it. If it gets chalked up a little bit and you see maybe a Baylor versus Kentucky game in the Elite Eight, I mean, that is exactly what the people have wanted. 2 of the best teams all year long. How would they match up together?
Well, I mean, I think, we have to wait and see what happens if, Baylor can show that it still has the same jolt and the same moxie that it has throughout the NCAA tournament. For me, the Kentucky thing is all going to come down to Kellen Grady. when Kellen Grady makes shots, it
Oh, yeah.
opens things up for the rest of Kentucky's offense. And talking to their staff and other people and especially a lot of other SEC coaches, that is the thing that people have kind of noticed. He's a much different threat for Kentucky when he's playing. Kentucky is a much different team when Kellen Grady is a threat, I should say.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize that some people might think Kentucky's the same kind of team every year. A lot of NBA prospects, a lot of talent, no success. They're completely different with transfers. And Severe Wheeler, Oscar Tshiebwe is, one of the best transfers I've ever seen in my life, to be honest.
That's probably the year.
Right. And I don't know if you've ever seen them from a transfer. And people don't realize that they don't just have NBA talent, which they do in guys like Ty Washington and throughout the bench for 2023. But they have guys that are bred college basketball winners. Like, they are not built for the NBA as much as they are to win right now. I think that's what makes Kentucky better than they always are, even when they're 1 seeds and they're undefeated or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I also think we're going to find out too how teams who went heavy in the portal are going to do in the NCAA tournament. So many of them did. We're going to find out.
Right, because this was a huge transfer year. You kind of mentioned Texas and a couple of other teams. We talked about Darren Morsell. Like, the list goes on of transfers more than ever this year because of the extra year of eligibility and things like that. And that's kind of is what it is. Are there any teams that everyone that fills out the brackets looking for sleepers and stuff like that? Like, we talked about Murray State. We talked about a couple of teams that we like. Are there any other high seeds, maybe 7 and up, that you're extra excited to watch for and you really think are set up for maybe a big run here?
I like South Dakota State. South Dakota State, I think, is a team that you look at, and South Dakota State has all the requisites of what a sleeper in this tournament is. When I'm trying to identify sleepers, I'm saying, do you have experience? Do you have returning personnel? Do you shoot the three well? And is there a regularity in terms of expectation of winning? South Dakota State, won 30 games. South Dakota State hasn't lost since early December, and South Dakota State as a team shoots over 44% from three. To me, this is one of the best games in the round of 64. And if you're Providence now, you're in a difficult spot because you've had a dream season. You've won a Big East regular season title for the first time ever. And now you're in a scenario where I think if you don't win 2 games and get to the second weekend, the season's going to be a disappointment.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think Ed Cooley was a finalist for Coach of the Year, and they did kind of die down. They're trending in the wrong direction. You never want to be trending in the wrong direction ever, especially going into the tournament. We know that from history. Even like you said, like maybe they had a couple extra days rest, but you'd rather be playing for a Big East title in Madison Square Garden on Saturday night than sitting on your couch and waiting to be drawn for the NCAA tournament. I think I agree with you. I think most of the public is going to end up going this way. It's one of those upsets where you feel like this is their bred to win this game right here, South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits. But we will see. And they might get Iowa in the second round. And we mentioned that matchup of high-powered offenses. South Dakota State, I think, is one of 2 teams that have 3 guys who score 15 a game. It's absolutely bonkers that is real.
Bonkers indeed. Good word.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe a new metaphor for the Rothsteinites on Twitter. But yeah, anyone else on the upper region, South and West, that you're looking at sleepers, or you think it's going to be mostly chalked up for those?
Whatever I think the opposite seems to happen over the years. I'm going to take South Dakota State over Providence, and obviously I'm going to take Iowa to a Final Four. That's the region of vulnerability. And then up top, a lot of people like Loyola Chicago. I personally think everybody's, kind of underrating Illinois. I like Chattanooga, but not against Illinois. And, we'll see. I think TCU is a very dangerous team here. TCU is a team that, a lot of people – I think, don't understand how, competitive they can be out of the Big 12. They've recently won a lot of big games, beating Kansas. So that's a team. I love those 8-9s, potentially whoever wins that game in the round of 32.
Yeah, I think we've seen that over the years where Villanova played Wisconsin a couple of years ago, last year, Illinois and Loyola. And people tend to overlook that the 1 seeds do exit early, and very rarely do we get all of them in the Final Four. It's only happened, I think, 1 time or a couple times. And then very rarely do we even get all of them in the Elite 8 and Sweet 16. Like, there's always a couple high seeds that exit early. And like you said, those 8-9s are either teams like TCU that have kind of been up and down in Seton Hall, or teams like Memphis and Boise State who have been trending in the upward direction for most of the season. So those are definitely dangerous teams.
No question, man. But it was good ramping with you, Ryan.
Yeah, of course. I guess that was we appreciate you coming on, John, as always. Bracket talk, that was great. It's good to hear your insights on everything. Obviously, you are the guru for us. We love it. And I guess happy March and a big week for us. And Thursday, what's your last thing? Tradition on Thursday at 12:10, 12:15. What are you doing?
I'm just consuming it like everybody else. I'm just trying to take it minute by minute. I mean, you know the rules. We sleep in May.
We do sleep in May. I guess I'll see you. I'll see you then. I'll see you in June.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too, John. All right, guys. That was great from John. We got a lot of insight from him. We filled out most of the bracket with some of his insights. That was definitely a good time. Looking at everything, we obviously didn't get to every single game, every pick, but we got a lot of it, and I got a lot of good insights to who he likes, who he doesn't like. And I think the South Dakota State thing is a great one. We talked about Murray and Davidson. This is a potential upset. The Davidson game, Virginia Tech and Texas, opposite sides. We're definitely, and we also talked about the regions, South versus East, probably the two best regions. West is a little bit of weird, a lot of high-powered names and coaches. And then the Midwest, obviously the bottom right, is kind of the weaker one. Like you said, vulnerability, the region of vulnerability, and I'm going to use that 100%. And he thinks Iowa's coming out of there. I think that's going to be a really, really popular pick, rightfully so. Keegan Murray and the Hawkeyes are playing unbelievable, but only time will tell. This game would be awesome. This game would be awesome, Iowa and South Dakota State. I can't imagine any less than 160 or 170, 180 points in this game because these two teams are two of the best offenses in the entire country, if not the two best offenses in the entire country. But only time will tell to see. And it's called the Madness for a reason. It's called March Madness for a reason. We fill up brackets and make predictions. No one's ever going to be perfectly right, and I can't imagine that either of us are going to be very close to either, because imagine we say Arizona, we like this, we like Baylor, we like Kentucky, we like Iowa, and then all of a sudden Richmond takes down Iowa and Colgate takes down Wisconsin. Things like that do happen. But only time will tell. We do wish you all the best of luck in filling your brackets because it's going to be fun. And definitely want to hear if you guys have any last questions before we hop off. By all means, questions, ask away. But I will stay on here and fill out the bracket based off John's advice, right? Because we might as well. I do think it's going to be a good game here. But like I said, if you guys have questions, hit them in the chat. We'll pop them up here and we'll answer them. I do think we didn't get to this one. I'm very interested in New Mexico State with Teddy Allen and Serge Jabari Rice because I think it's going to be a really, really good game here. Better than people think for New Mexico State, but we shall see. Speaking of the 12 seeds, Fred says, which 12 seed has the best chance? The best chance to win a game, I would go, I'm looking at, let's see. That's the play-in. I think Richmond, if they weren't playing Iowa, I'd say them. I'd probably go New Mexico State or UAB. I think UAB is probably got the best chance based on number fire win probability, 15% there, 19% for New Mexico State. I do think New Mexico State is a sleeper that people are overlooking already. But that's fine. That happens every year, and I think they are definitely dangerous. They haven't had a Teddy Allen. New Mexico State's in the tournament almost every year out of the Big West, but out of the SWAC, and I don't think that they're the same team as always. Teddy Allen's one of the best mid-major players in the entire country, so they're definitely a team to watch out for 100%. UConn has been good, in my opinion, the second best team in the Big East, but I like New Mexico State in this game. I like them to come play Arkansas, but that's definitely going to be tough for sure if they get past UConn. To go and play Arkansas, I think it'll end up being chalked 1-4 on the top of the Midwest, at least in the Sweet 16. But only time will tell. John mentioned he likes Rutgers out of the Notre Dame game and potentially Rutgers to be Alabama or Notre Dame, but he liked Rutgers more. I tend to agree with him on that because I think Rutgers matches up really well with the guard play of Alabama, and they can really frustrate them and slow them down, which we've seen Alabama struggle with. And I think we can't take the play-in yet. We're going to take the play-in, though. We can't click it. We'll take them. We'll take Rutgers, hopefully past here. We have Texas Tech, and we already talked about this matchup potentially being an Elite Eight with a path to the Final Four. I think this is a crazy, crazy good game. Kind of two very, very different teams. Texas Tech's more balanced, defensive-minded. Gonzaga is kind of balanced, but they have star power, and they're heavily offensively favored. But it's hard to go against the Zags also. We talk about how good they are every single year. This year, they're no different. And honestly, I think they're better than they were last year, even without Jalen Suggs. Andrew Nembhard has been a great transfer. He's been amazing this year. So I think Gonzaga is the team to be here. And I'm going to take them to the Final Four. We talked about Baylor. We won't go through everything here, but Baylor and Kentucky. I don't know. I think this region is too good for us to get these two teams. I think they're just as good as the other seeds for relative to their spot and their seed. But I think that this is going to end up being other seeds than 1-2 and not chalked up because Virginia Tech is dangerous. Texas is dangerous. UCLA, St. Mary's, Wyoming, and Indiana are the play-in here. Those teams are dangerous. That's going to be an incredible matchup for UCLA in the second round. Marquette, North Carolina, and Baylor. We talked about this. But if you're looking at it and you're looking at who's playing well right now going into everything, I think it's hard not to go with Kentucky. But I still fear about the second round game. So I'm going to go with Baylor because I'm still a Baylor guy. if this was the Elite Eight especially. But like I said, there's going to be tons of upsets here, I think, because these teams are so good. What are the big team stats to look at when you're looking at matchups? I think it depends how the teams play for sure. Because if let's take this game for example. I keep going back to it. San Diego State and Kansas. Say this is the second round matchup. San Diego State's a heavily defensive team, and Kansas is the opposite, completely for the most part, completely offense. But so in a sense like that, you might look at how San Diego State forces turnovers. Does Kansas turn the ball over a lot? Are they going to feed into that, the mighty defense of the San Diego State Aztecs? If that's the matchup, you look at things like that. Other than that, I think John hit it on the head before. 3-point shooting experience is such a big thing. An experienced guard is even bigger. Having an experienced guard running your offense, like a Colin Gillespie on Villanova, is beyond everything because you know they can shoot the free throw well. You know they can control the flow of the offense, slow the game down, speed the game up if they need to in whatever situation they are, especially in a tournament setup when things are really high pressure. So I think those are a few things. Turnovers are huge. Abilene Christian beat Texas last year in the 14-3 game. Abilene Christian coming in was the best turnover team in the entire country. They had the highest turnover margin. They forced the most turnovers in the country. Little things like that are what you really need to look for. I think free throw shooting, I said before about the guards, is huge because there's more fouls in March. The games are closer, so there's more fouls, so more free throws. If you can shoot the free throw well and you're an experienced team, you're going to be able to hold off other teams much more than other teams will. I think that's why I like Davidson out of this over here. They do all that really well. Experience, really good shooting the ball, really good 3-point shooters. Hyungjin Lee is awesome to watch. We talk about the Foster Lawyer game against Michigan State. He can shoot the three, absolutely electric. They have the best free throw shooter in the entire country who's a senior this year for Davidson. So I think they're definitely a dangerous team to watch out for here. Those are just some of the stats. I guess we'll finish this out here. Loyola Chicago, I do like Loyola. I think this is going to end up being Tennessee Nova because these are the two best teams in this bottom part by a pretty big landslide. I'm going to ride with the experience in Villanova, even though Tennessee's hot. I'm going to ride with that. Arizona's been awesome. This is kind of chalked right now. It's basically all chalk. But I think, like John said, there's a lot of firepower here. I actually like UAB in this game personally. John said it's kind of like a flyer pick. I think I tend to take chances on those flyer picks where I think it has a pretty good chance. Jelly Walker, Jordan Walker is awesome. He's one of the best mid-major players and scorers you'll see in all college basketball. And I think I'm going to go with the experience in Villanova. Now, this isn't a great matchup for Villanova, excuse me. We talked about athletically it is. So you know what? We'll switch it. We'll go off John. We'll go on the John knowledge because he is king. We go with John. This is the Final Four we got out of our talk with John. We got Gonzaga, Baylor, Arizona, Iowa. I like this Final Four. Is it going to be 3 1 seeds? Probably not. But this is what could we have a West Coast final? I could definitely see that. I'd probably lean Gonzaga, Arizona, West Coast final if this was the Final Four. This is not going to be my final bracket by any means. I will definitely do more throughout the week with y'all, and we'll talk about that. We'll put them on Twitter and everywhere else. But if this was kind of how we set it up with John, this is like our joint bracket, I guess. I would take Gonzaga over Arizona in the final. I think it's finally time for Gonzaga to seal their fate and stop getting the fraudulent calls because they don't deserve that. They really don't deserve that at all. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for being on here. We appreciate it. We had a great time. Stay tuned this whole week for more content on college basketball, March Madness, TikTok, Twitter, everywhere, Instagram. John's going to hopefully join us again soon. We'll do something throughout the week. Definitely follow him if you don't already. Then how are you March Madness fan? Because we sleep in May and this is March. But again, we appreciate y'all for being here. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. It's been awesome. Hopefully we do this again. Hope you guys had the best luck filling out your bracket and you're not tearing them by your second day or second hour of the first day. And enjoy it also. Have fun filling out your bracket. This is the best part is these 3 days, in my opinion, are the best part where you're picking random upsets. Like I'm picking Jacksonville State. I'm not actually picking Jacksonville State. I'm picking Jacksonville State and I'm picking Miami and Colgate. Have some fun with it. Don't get too upset. It's very hard to get a bracket. 1 in whatever 20 trillions, quintillions, whatever it is, chance of getting a perfect bracket. It's not going to happen, but you can only hope. But all right. Hope you guys have a great day, great week. Enjoy the tournament. Enjoy the games. And I will catch you guys